Titan Soul's story is very hidden, and there might not even intentionally be a story, but that didn't stop me from spending about 30 hours of my life pouring through all the text and murals in the game, as well as studying up on Kabbalah and Judaism in general, trying to untangle everything into a cohesive story, and then several more hours writing this. Was I right? Probably not, I don't know, but I'm more right than anyone else because no one else has done this before. Now this contains heavy spoilers for the game, the bosses, the story, and so on, so I highly recommend you go play the game first, every single boss. You'll know when that is, trust me. So, first and foremost, before we get into what's actually in the game, I need to prove to you that this game's lore is based on Judaism, and at least parts of Kabbalah. Of course, it takes creative liberties, as we'll see, but it is based on it. The most obvious and well-known connections, besides maybe Goliath, which we'll get to, is that of Cain and Havel. Cain and Havel are the Hebrew names for Cain and Abel, the first murderer and the first to be murdered. Cain and Abel were sons of Adam, and they were each giving an offering to God, Cain giving his fruits that he had grown, and Abel giving his firstlings of his sheep. Abel's offering was accepted, but Cain's was not. Cain, being jealous of his brother's offering being accepted, murdered Abel. In Titan Souls, Havel is known as the murdered guardian of the second gate, and Cain is the disgraced guardian of the second gate. Cain is in an area similar to that of the New Testament hell, a lake of fire, but despite the fire, it also fits in with the Jewish version of hell, being destruction, with him literally being decapitated. Aside from Havel and Cain, there's also Set, who is another son of Adam, known as Set in Hebrew and Seth in English. I can't speak for other languages, as I don't know any others, but you can trust me that Seth was indeed a son of Adam. Seth was the third son of Adam, and the only other son mentioned by name. Set means appointed, as God appointed Seth in Abel's place, because, Abel kinda died and all that. Not much is said about Seth, but I think the connection is obvious. The fourth guardian, well not the final connection to Judaism, is probably the most obvious. But where's David, I hear you asking, even though you're temporally very far away? Well, the thing is, ELHANAN, the big guy with the arrow, probably killed Goliath. And this is one of the most blatant contradictions within modern versions of the Bible. In 1 Samuel, there exists the story of David that you all know from that. 2 Samuel, there's a story it's unlikely that you know. It credits ELHANAN for the death of Goliath, not David. Then in 1 Chronicles, it says ELHANAN slew the brother of Goliath. There are two possibilities, generally believed by two groups. Most modern-day followers of the religions think that either ELHANAN was David's name before he became king, or that a scribe made an error in copying and 2 Samuel was supposed to say brother of instead of just Goliath. The other possibility, generally believed by secular scholars, is that ELHANAN is the one who killed Goliath, but it was changed later to add credence to David being king. Lami, Goliath's brother, is never mentioned anywhere else in the Bible and is believed to be taken from the latter half of the Hebrew word for Bethlehemite. One more thing about the Guardians. They all start with Gol, which likely stands for golem. A golem is an animated anthropomorphic being made of inanimate material, such as clay or mud. Golems seem pretty ubiquitous across pop culture and ancient cultures, at least they did to me. However, golems are Hebrew in origin. They tend to be animated by truth. If you went and played the game before watching this like I told you to, you're starting to understand things, no? The Hebrew word for truth would be written on the golem's forehead, and it would be killed by erasing one of the letters on its head, thus changing the word from truth to death. Being animated by truth will come into play later, so remember it. Speaking of truth, the final reference to Judaism that I'm going to bring up for now, don't worry, there'll be more, the design of the secret boss itself. Truth is based on the description of the Ophanim angels, the highest ranking class of angels within the Bible. These Ophanim are described in Ezekiel chapter 1, beside another type of angel, the cherubim, called living creatures here. Now as I beheld the living creatures, behold one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl. And they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. As for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them 4. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went, thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood, and when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the creatures was within them. So, wheels within wheels with eyes on the rim of the wheels, pretty much a perfect description of truth. The ELHANAN always followed the cherubim, but again, I think creative liberty can be granted to a game whose story is based on the religion. Now let's get into the 5 instances of dialogue in the entire game before we get to the murals, since the meaning of the murals make more sense after we go over the text, as well as some other text, such as the names and descriptions of the titans, aside from the 2 we've already gone through, of course. The first dialogue you're likely to see is that of Elder's speech that takes place prior to defeating the soul. Another broken soul seeking truth, less encumbered than the last. You have paid a high toll indeed for the abomination in your quiver. And for what? Knowledge? Power? I hope it was worth it. Do what you must. So, what can we glean from this? Well, we aren't the first to seek truth, first of all. We have less equipment than the last person to do it, perhaps less armor or weaponry. We know that it costs a lot, whether monetarily or otherwise, to create an arrow such as ours, and that we can gain something, or at least some believe that we can, through this endeavor, such as knowledge or power. So, we know ELHANAN has a similar arrow to ours, if not exactly the same, but he also has armor and other arrows, so I think it's fair to say that ELHANAN is at least one of the other broken souls, and the last. It's also highly probable that Elder knows of the price to obtain the arrow from ELHANAN, as we only see 2 others in the game, one from ELHANAN and one that we'll talk about later. If you come back to the Elder after you fight the soul, the second to last boss and the first final boss, he says, "You found what you sought. You killed the second god, the one who took my place and created the 4 guardians. The rest of the titans here grew from lost souls. Some were like you, human. They lacked your conviction for killing." From this, we know that Elder believes our goal was to kill the soul. Now, why would that be? Is that how ELHANAN got his power? Well, considering the soul is alive and well, he either failed, or that wasn't his goal. Either way, I don't think it impacts the story all that much. We also know the soul created the 4 guardians. The golems and the other titans, the beasts, plants, chests, and rocks, all are inhabited by lost souls. We'll talk more about what that means later on. And we know that not only humans have souls. I would assume that that means that plants and animals also have souls. They lacked your conviction for killing, meaning they didn't want to kill as bad as you did. This either means that the titans themselves were less determined than you, or that they had ended up in the titans because they failed to kill. Maybe they died to Goliath and their souls found their way into the titans somehow? That's more speculation, but it doesn't exactly matter. Personally, I think the former statement is more likely. Finally, if you find the Elder on either hard mode or truth mode, he says, "I was the first life, the first soul born from truth, and from I came the first of you, and now we come full circle. The Maker is unmade, and one day you shall fall to the same fate. Do what you must." So, truth created the Elder and put soul into him. It's unlikely that truth created the soul, but we'll get into that. Remember the whole animated by truth thing with the golems. I know, so many loose threads, so many things to remember, but just bear with me. The Elder then created the first man. Now we come full circle is a little esoteric, but I guess it's just his creation killing him. The Maker, being truth, does not have a creator, and likely not an origin, simply has always existed, and this is corroborated by a later piece of dialogue. Us falling to the same fate as truth was a little confusing for me for a little while, but we need a bit more information to fully understand it, so we'll leave that one hanging too. The final 2 bits of dialogue come from truth itself, the first during that cutscene that takes place just before the fight. There is Titan writing around the eye that spells out, "Life from chaos, truth from life, all from truth," meaning that these things all must exist in tandem. Think like light and dark. Light didn't create dark, but they couldn't exist without each other. This has to be true, since truth is unmade and couldn't have been created by life, but rather they must exist in tandem. Life here is another name for soul. Remember what Elder said, "I was the first life, the first soul," and this is also corroborated by the final pieces of text. After killing truth, you see Titan writing circling around you. This translates to, "I am you and you are I. If either lives, neither will die." Remember, at this point you have absorbed the soul, life, and must exist in tandem with truth. You become life and you become truth. Truth cannot be dead because you, life, still exists. This is also what it means to be sharing the same fate. You share the same fate as truth in that you become truth. Notice your position within the vertical eye in the final cutscene, within truth. Now that we've gone through the dialogue, let's look at some descriptions of the Titans. The first 4 make sense, they don't really need much of an explanation, but I'll give it anyway, just in case. Subchart is Goliath's heart, BRAINFREEZE is his brain, IQ is one of his eyes, and Goliath guards the first gate. You must kill him to pass on through to the world of Titans. We've already gone through the 2 guardians of the second gate, and I've already explained role in Mulcain. Olbello, whose name is derived from Portobello, is just a big mushroom. Phanthesis is a poisonous flower. I've already covered ELHANAN. Avarice is interesting, known as the manifestation of greed. We already know that the Titan was created by lost souls, and it may be that the lost souls took on the attributes of the object they inhabited, or that these just so happen to be particularly greedy souls. Stratus is called the child of the mountain and sky, which is fitting from the name, as stratus is a kind of cloud. Soul is known by a few names in different translations, such as spirit, or more interestingly, wind. It's likely these souls found their way to the mountain itself. Yeti is just a yeti, and Onyxia is just a water serpent. Onyxia may be made of stone, hence the name, but it's likely just because she has hard scales. Golset has already been covered, and the final battle is the one that holds quite a few implications. The soul, the image of the Titan soul. Why does the image of the Titan soul resemble you? Keep that in the back of your mind. I think it's more than just because you happen to try to absorb it, especially since it looks like you even after you take the soul away. The soul also has an arrow like yours and ELHANAN's. Why? Again, I think it's more than just because you tried to absorb it. It can also use your arrow and you can pull its in but not use his. You can't do that to ELHANAN's, and ELHANAN can't do that to yours. Before we get into answering all that though, we need to discuss one more reference to Judaism, and the final one at that. Don't take my word for any of this, as I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think. In Kabbalah, there's a concept known as the Source. That's just one name for it, but that's the name I'm going to use because I like it. The Source is a collection of all souls, where all souls come from and where all soul must return to after death. Now, doesn't that seem kind of familiar? When the Elder mentions lost souls, why are they lost? Are they supposed to be somewhere specific? I think so, and I think that location is their soul, and that the soul is the Source. Souls that failed to return to the Source turned into Titans, or were at least emerged into Titans, and the four Guardians were infused with specific souls, those of the sons of Adam, and Goliath with those of great warriors of some kind, or even multiple warriors, since his eye, brain, and heart can all function perfectly fine on their own. There is also reincarnation, which will be important to explain a portion of the story that I'm about to get into. It is my belief that the first man, who we'll call Adam for brevity, became the soul, as he was the first soul bearer to die. He then took the Elder's place, whether by force or otherwise, and became the second god, after the Elder. Adam then created golems, and Truth put his son's souls into them. I'll explain why I believe Adam didn't do this himself soon. This would explain why the golems have the names they do. After a while of being the second god, Adam saw ELHANAN use a soul-infused arrow, which I'll get to in a minute, to destroy Goliath. Seeing the power of the soul, he wanted more power and created an arrow of his own to defeat Truth. Seeing this, Truth, unable to destroy a soul, reincarnated Adam, and that's who you play as. That would explain how you can create a soul arrow, how you know about it, why the soul can use your arrow, and how a man can defeat a Titan Slayer so easily. It also explains the coming full circle that the Elder talks about, and why Truth says that you are it. The Elder seems to believe you simply wanted the soul, as you just wanted your position back. He seems to not believe you want to kill him during this dialogue, as this is the only one in which he doesn't say, "do what you must." Now, to tie up some loose ends and explain some things that may still need explaining, let's go over the murals. I'm using the art book to get the murals, so hopefully they're all in there. The first is on the door behind Goliath. This is either Goliath protecting Truth, or Truth animating Goliath, giving him soul. This is a part of the reason I believe that Truth controlled the souls, not the soul itself, but it's more cut and dry in the next. The second one you see is behind the elevator right after Goliath. It depicts the creation of a soul arrow, likely that of ELHANAN's, or maybe the soul's. Notice the soul coming from Truth going into the man, being the main reason I think Truth controlled the soul. Then the soul coming from the man and going to the bow and arrow. This is also depicted in the intro cutscene, minus the Truth bit, where your character creates one of these weapons themselves. Notice the shape used to depict the soul. It's a little hard to tell, but it's a diagonal square, which really matters for the next mural. This mural is the one on a large tablet in the forest area and seems to show why Phanthesis is so large. On the wiki, under trivia, at the time of writing this, it says the little square looks like a meteor. However, this is more than likely untrue. The little square is Soul, as depicted in the previous mural, as well as a couple others we'll get into, such as the one depicting the creation of Mol and Rolkain. Also notice the other souls scattered around, almost looking like sparkles. This would seem to imply that it isn't just the soul of one being, but multiple. The multiple soul idea is corroborated by the mural depicting Mol and Rolkain, as we see 3 souls entering into them. Whether these were lost souls captured by Golcain, lost souls that just happened to wander in, or souls controlled by truth is unknown, and frankly inconsequential. It also shows that the two were created by Golcain, but that's also shown in their description, subtitle things. The final mural I want to talk about is semi-hidden in the northwestern portion of the mountain area. It seems to depict Truth putting soul into someone, most likely Adam. Notice the soul shapes all around Truth, and the beam going directly into the man. Now, a couple loose ends I want to tie up. The vertical eyes definitely represent Truth, given the vertical eye above the door to Truth and all the murals that are most likely to depict Truth. The Elder also has a vertical eye, but it's likely because he was created directly by Truth. The horizontal eye doors are more likely the soul, mostly because there's pretty much nothing else it could be. Either that or the Elder, since humans have horizontal eyes. And if we're going with the direct creation thing, the Elder would create something with horizontal eyes. That's relatively inconsequential though. Also, the soul shape is used everywhere in the game. It decorates the floor, the columns, Golhavel's coffins, in murals. It's just everywhere. I don't know if it's an important symbol to the Titans or if it means there are souls everywhere, but again, relatively inconsequential. Something that matters, at least a little bit anyway, is a feature that you may have missed, Golset's laser. Not that you missed the laser, but how it's powered. Given the switches, it's probably mechanical, and since he freaks out and frantically tries to crush you before it's activated, it's likely a huge weakness. Goliath has a similar circle, though it isn't depicted by the murals. This calls into question the creator of the murals, but I don't think that it necessarily matters. Just that they were made after the defeat of Goliath. Goliath doesn't have switches in his arena, meaning the circle served a different purpose, or it was powered differently. Finally, the question of what chaos is. I think it may just be the floating eyes and mouths that Truth has in the final battle. They seem pretty chaotic. They even try to confuse you in the second phase. The eyes don't hurt you, just knock you over and prevent you from attacking. Or maybe existence itself is just chaotic. Whatever chaos is, I don't think it matters all that much, for the story to make sense anyway. Now with all that information out of the way, here's a dramatic version of what I believe the story of Titan Souls to be. I'm not the best of writers, but I did what I could given the slew of information above. Enjoy.
Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, in the
beginning, there was chaos, and from chaos came life, and from life came truth. Not that one brought the other into existence, but that one necessarily caused the other to exist, not too dissimilar to the existence of light necessitating the existence of dark. Though chaos, life, and truth aren't exactly opposites, quite the contrary. Truth created all the earth, the land, and the oceans. Using life, Truth created a being known only in legend as the Elder, the first of the gods. The Elder created the first man, and Truth gave man's soul, the same energy used in the Elder to bring him to life. The first man, Adam, had children, also given soul, given life. When Adam died, he was returned to life, the collection of all soul, the Titan soul. The Titan soul, having knowledge in that of Adam, took the Elder's place, whether forcefully or compliantly is unknown, and became the second god. Adam created guardians of the soul and of truth, intended for the souls of his children. Golhavel was created first, then Golcain, tasked with guarding the gate that led up to the place in which truth resided. Golcain, jealous of Golhavel's status of being the first guardian, forged two guardians of his own in the lava under the mountain, hoping to gain the favor of their father. Instead, Golcain was reprimanded for trying to imitate the power of gods. Golcain, his jealousy for his brother combining with his newfound hatred for his father, struck Golhavel on the head, murdering him. As punishment for his transgressions, Golcain was placed below the mountain to suffer the eternal heat of the lakes of fire, in the same spot he had labored to create his very own guardians. Golhavel's soul was placed back into his mask, the only part of him intact enough for such a procedure, allowing him to continue serving as a guardian. Seeing what had happened to his two guardians, Adam needed two more. Enter Golset, another of Adam's sons. Golset was created with a special weapon the other two didn't have, powered mechanically, which gave Golset an obvious weakness the others also didn't have. Last, in his last-ditch attempt to create a truly powerful guardian, Goliath was born. He was by far the strongest, smartest, bravest, and sharpest-eyed of all the guardians, with the same weapon as Golset, only powered by souls, removing the weakness. As more men and animals died, their souls would return to life, to Adam, but some would get lost. Some would find their way into a beast, making it far more powerful than any other beast. Others would make their way into a water serpent, giving it the power of lightning and immense size. Others still would end up in the mountain itself, creating a golem that rivaled the guardians in strength, with an even stronger weapon than Goliath, but without the intelligence required to use it. Some even found their way into the forest, into a plant, granting it autonomy and great size, or into a fungus, granting it the same. Finally, the last titan grown from lost souls, a chest housing the treasures of men. The soul in this chest would take on the attributes of the item, becoming the symbol of avarice. Men typically avoided the world of titans. The giant beasts were far too imposing for any to handle, and those daring enough to try would be crushed under the fists of Goliath and buried within the same graveyard as was built for Golhavel himself. This is how the world was, until a great hunter found the power of the soul. With great pain and sacrifice, he split his soul, putting part into his arrow, part into his bow, and the rest back into himself. With his new weapon, ELHANAN was able to destroy Goliath with ease, his arrow striking the golem in the head, cracking his stone skull wide open, and taking one of his eyes out with it. He then fired the arrow at its chest, breaking open a large hole, causing the soul-powered weapon to stop working and the guardian's heart to fall out. Finally, he struck him again on the chest, taking his soul. This feat sealed ELHANAN in legend as a Titan Slayer, the only man to ever destroy a Titan. Adam gave an offer to ELHANAN, seeing his power. ELHANAN could be the strongest warrior ever to exist, if he would simply return the souls put into Goliath and serve as a guardian himself. ELHANAN accepted, eager to have such great strength. Goliath, now in pieces, was revived, no longer the great guardian he once was, but a guardian nonetheless. Besides, ELHANAN was here to take his place. The soul placed eyes on the entrance to the world of Titans so that he could see all who entered. The Elder was granted a similar eye by truth, though not much else, his god status stripped of him. Again, whether by choice or by force is unknown. Despite this, the Elder looked upon the world with great curiosity, wanting only to learn. He even spoke to ELHANAN, inquiring about the Titan-slaying arrow he had in his quiver. He spoke to truth about their and his own origins, even if he couldn't comprehend the height and scope of said knowledge. Adam, after so long of being the second god, grew discontent. He wanted more. He created a soul arrow, far more powerful than that of ELHANAN's, to destroy Truth. Truth, seeing the imminent betrayal, attempted to destroy Adam's soul, but he had grown far too powerful. The last Truth could do was reincarnate him into a man. With nothing but his knowledge, this man got to work. Using ELHANAN's method of legend, he created his own Titan-slaying weapon, and trained for years with his bow and arrow. Finally, he was ready to take on the Titans. He knew the Titans' weaknesses, and a lot of the work had been done for him. Goliath was already destroyed thanks to ELHANAN. Golcain and Golhavel were already half destroyed, leaving them as no challenge. The beasts and flora were easily outsmarted, being nothing more than rage-filled husks. Having studied ELHANAN for years, he was easily outclassed. There was Golset, whose mechanical weakness allowed him to be destroyed without trouble. And finally, the soul itself. Adam knew better than anyone how he would fight, and came out triumphant. With all the power of the souls, including the Titan soul itself, Adam faced Truth. Before the fight, Truth gave Adam a word of caution. Chaos from life, truth from life, all from truth. The Maker is unmade, and they are inextricably linked together. Adam, with his newfound power, destroyed Truth. In its final moments, Truth told Adam one last thing. I am you are I. If either lives, neither will die. If life exists, then truth must exist, even if it's within life itself. And so, Adam became the Maker, fulfilling the Elder's prophecy and his very own goal. Adam, the first man, creation of creation, the one who took the place of its creator and inherited the very power of life, though couldn't control it. He had overcome all obstacles in his path and become the ultimate. Alright, I gotta record an outro, because if I didn't, I don't know, I feel like I probably should. Thank you for watching this video. It took a lot of effort. I put, a lot of time into this. I spent probably, 30 hours researching, another several hours writing, and then, I don't know, I've spent probably 10 hours on just getting the clips and recording and editing, so, anyway, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Love you all, and I don't know how to end this.